Welcome to our channel. Today, we bring you news that weighs heavy on the heart. Some truly remarkable people have recently left this world. In this video, we will share their stories, their legacy, their final chapters. As a sign of remembrance and in support of their memory, please subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your simple action can help others hear their stories and keep their memory alive. We won't delay any longer. Let's begin this tribute to those we've lost. On April 29, 2025, in Charleston, South Carolina, the world lost Olivia Katherine Monroe, a pioneering American scientist, environmental activist, and educator, whose groundbreaking work changed the global conversation about climate responsibility. She passed away quietly in her childhood home, the very place where she had first gazed at the endless southern skies and dreamed of saving the earth. Olivia was born on August 13, 1947 in Savannah, Georgia, to a modest family of farmers. Her father tended the soil with tireless hands. Her mother kept a one-room library for the local community. From them, Olivia inherited both a profound reverence for nature and an unyielding respect for knowledge. Childhood summers spent wandering through fields, forests, and marshlands instilled in her a deep emotional bond with the natural world, a bond that would later become the backbone of her life's mission. When she was 10 years old, a devastating flood swept through their town, destroying homes and crops. Olivia saw firsthand how human vulnerability was intertwined with nature's fury. That event etched into her mind a simple but lifelong conviction: the earth must be protected not just for beauty, but for survival. She earned a scholarship to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where she studied environmental science. Her mentor, Dr. Evelyn Grant, a legendary figure in conservation biology, recognized Olivia's rare ability to connect empirical research with public mobilization. Under Grant's guidance, Olivia developed a new model for urban wetlands restoration, blending traditional ecological knowledge with modern science. In 1978, at the age of 31, Olivia launched the Southeastern Sustainability Project, the first regional initiative aimed at restoring degraded coastal ecosystems through community-led efforts. Despite fierce political opposition and scarce funding, she persisted, rallying volunteers, hosting town halls, and publishing a series of influential articles that caught national attention. Her breakthrough came in 1985, when she presented her findings at the United Nations Environmental Conference in Nairobi. Her speech, titled The Fragile Thread, argued that protecting small local environments was the key to global resilience. It changed the tone of international conservation discourse forever. In 1986, she was awarded the Rachel Carson Environmental Prize by the United States for innovative leadership in community-driven conservation. The award elevated her from a regional activist to an international figure, opening doors to partnerships with global organizations and inspiring young scientists around the world. Throughout her career, Olivia remained fiercely independent. She refused lucrative offers from major corporations, choosing instead to found her own nonprofit, Earthwoven Alliance, in 1992. Earthwoven helped over 200 rural communities across the United States reclaim their natural habitats, while creating sustainable economic opportunities. Despite her many successes, Olivia faced setbacks. In the late 90s, she battled severe burnout after a failed federal project she had championed was dismantled by political changes. During this difficult period, she withdrew from public life, returning to Charleston to care for her aging mother and reflect on her next steps. It was during these years of quiet that she wrote her seminal book, Roots Beneath Our Feet, a contemplative exploration of humanity's dependence on fragile ecosystems. which won the National Book Award for Nonfiction in 2003. Privately, Olivia was introspective and tender-hearted. She never married, but had a long-term partnership with fellow environmentalist Dr. Maria Torres. Their relationship, though often long-distance due to their respective fieldwork, was described by friends as a dialogue between two rivers, sometimes running parallel, sometimes braiding together. At home, Olivia kept a wild garden where native plants grew untamed, and she loved restoring antique birdhouses. She spoke slowly, often leaving space between her words, as if giving ideas room to breathe. She collected river stones from every place she visited, believing each held a memory worth preserving. Her public persona, the fiery, eloquent defender of Earth, contrasted sharply with her private shyness and preference for solitude. She believed action mattered more than applause. Among her most quoted phrases were, "Saving a forest starts with saving a seed." Hope is a verb with muddy boots. We are not stewards of nature, we are its most fragile offspring. In her final years, Olivia continued to work quietly, mentoring a new generation of environmental leaders. Her students, among them world-renowned ecologists and climate policy architects, often spoke of her as the soul behind their missions. Diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 2023, Olivia faced her final chapter with the same grace she had offered the earth, with patience, dignity, and fierce gratitude. In her last public letter she wrote, "May we all be better ancestors than guests." Her final days were spent in the home her father had built, surrounded by the songs of marsh birds and the scent of honeysuckle. She passed away at sunrise, just as the tide rolled in. A fitting farewell for a woman who had lived her life according to the rhythms of the natural world. Olivia Catherine Munro left behind not just memories, but an entire era embodied in her writings, ideas, and students. On April 30th, 2025, in Austin, Texas, the world mourned the passing of Thomas Everett Chandler, a groundbreaking American musician, songwriter, and educator, whose work forever altered the landscape of American folk and blues music. He passed away in the same city, where he had first taken the stage with only a borrowed guitar and a pocket full of unfinished songs. Thomas was born on February 16, 1948, in Jackson, Mississippi. He grew up in a small wooden house on the outskirts of town, the youngest of 5 siblings. His father, a carpenter, and his mother, a church choir leader, instilled in him a profound respect for craftsmanship, faith, and the healing power of music. The sounds of gospel choirs, Delta blues, and the crackle of old radio broadcasts filled his childhood, weaving themselves into the fabric of his soul. Life was not easy. At the age of 13, Thomas lost his older brother to a factory accident, a tragedy that left a permanent fissure in his heart and ignited a need to give voice to suffering through music. As he once said, "A song, if honest enough, can carry grief better than silence ever could." After high school, Thomas hitchhiked to Memphis, surviving on odd jobs and open mic earnings. He was discovered by legendary blues guitarist Robert "Slim" Carver, who became his mentor and first real teacher. Under Slim's guidance, Thomas learned that music was not about perfection, but about presence, about standing inside the storm and singing anyway. In 1974, Chandler released his debut album, Dirt Roads and Daydreams, a raw, blisteringly honest collection of songs that spoke of loss, longing, and resilience. Though it received little mainstream attention, the album became a cult classic among musicians and music critics alike. His intricate guitar fingerpicking, husky voice, and poetic lyrics were described by Rolling Stone as the sound of dust swirling under an endless sun. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, Thomas pioneered what would later be called New Americana, blending traditional folk, blues, and roots music with contemporary storytelling. His 1987 album Shadows on Main Street earned him a Grammy Award for Best Contemporary Folk Album, finally bringing him into the national spotlight. In 2004, the United States honored him with the National Endowment for the Arts National Heritage Fellowship for preserving and innovating the American musical tradition. The award shifted public perception of Thomas from cult figure to national treasure. However, success came with struggles. Thomas battled severe stage fright for much of his career. It led to canceled tours, abrupt disappearances from public life, and bouts of deep depression. He spent long stretches living quietly in rural Texas, far from the spotlight, writing songs no one would hear for years. His personal life mirrored his art, beautiful, imperfect, and marked by deep emotion. Thomas married painter Rebecca Lane in 1979. Their union was passionate but turbulent, strained by Thomas's emotional volatility and endless touring. They divorced after 10 years, but remained close friends until her death in 2015. They had one daughter, Amelia, who became a poet and often described her father as a man stitched together from music and apology. At home, Thomas was an introvert, tending a small vegetable garden, keeping stray cats, and filling notebooks with unfinished verses. He collected vintage harmonicas and believed deeply in the restorative power of nature and solitude. Despite his fame, Thomas never lost his sense of humility. He performed countless benefit concerts, established the Chandler Folk Music Scholarship for low-income students in 2008, and mentored dozens of young musicians who now carry forward his legacy. Among his most beloved sayings were, "Sing your scars, not your victories." "The truest music is made when nobody is clapping." "Hope is a cracked window, not a door." In his later years, Thomas was diagnosed with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, likely the result of a lifetime spent in smoky bars and dusty roads. Nevertheless, he continued to write and perform small, intimate shows where his voice, though weakened, held even greater depth and sincerity. His final public performance took place at the historic Cactus Cafe in Austin, 3 months before his death. Sitting under a single soft light, Thomas played The Longest River, his very first song, as the audience wept quietly. In his last interview, conducted just weeks before he passed, he said, "A good song is a place you can rest when the world wears holes in you. I hope I built enough places for folks to rest." Thomas Everett Chandler left behind not just memories, but an entire era embodied in his writings, ideas, and students. Christopher Catesby Harrington, known to the world as Kit, was born on December 26, 1986 in Acton, a humming patchwork of London's western outskirts. Acton in those years was a working-class crucible, neither the grand storybook London tourists dreamed of, nor the stifled suburbs that lined the motorways. It was a place where red brick terraces leaned together like conspirators, where corner shops carried the sense of fresh bread in yesterday's rain, and where life pulsed with a quiet, industrious rhythm. The winters were gray and heavy, the streets shining under the dull light of early sunsets, but inside the walls of his childhood home, the world was warmer, full of imagination and the fragile, essential hope of dreams not yet dared. Kit was born to Deborah Jane Catesby, an accomplished former playwright and creative spirit, and Sir David Richard Harrington, the 15th Baronet Harrington, who worked in the world of business, quietly bearing the fading echoes of aristocracy in a modern world. Deborah was the soul of the house, articulate, probing, possessed of a mind that loved story and satire. David was steadier, pragmatic, a man who measured life carefully but loved deeply. Together they cultivated a home where imagination was not only allowed but nurtured. They valued curiosity over conformity, empathy over arrogance, and although the Harringtons' lineage stretched back to Charles II, their household was one where polish mattered less than integrity. Kit had an older brother, John, and between them bloomed a rivalry that was more brotherhood than battle. Childhood in Acton was a tightrope walk between make-believe and mild melancholy. Games played in small back gardens, epic battles fought with wooden swords, long evenings spent curled up with books, losing himself in tales of ancient heroes, dragons, and lost kingdoms. Early on, Kit learned that escape could be built from words and willpower alone. From the beginning, he was a study in contrasts. Shy yet fearless when performing, introspective but able to command a room when called upon. He was a boy who could spend hours examining the architecture of a spider's web, or the way the wind sculpted the tops of hedgerows. Yet when asked to stand before family and recite a poem or tell a story, he blossomed, voice clear, eyes bright with hidden fire. You could see it, Deborah would later say. He wasn't just speaking the words, he was becoming them. School years were a patchwork of both trial and triumph. Kit attended Southfield Primary School and later the prestigious Chantry High School, before moving on to Worcester Sixth Form College. He was not the loudest boy in class, nor the star athlete. Instead, he carried the sort of presence that teachers and classmates alike instinctively respected. His favorite subjects were history and English, both windows into human nature, both places where he could indulge his insatiable curiosity about why people chose to act, to betray, to love, to lose. There were struggles too. Kit was not immune to the invisible bruises adolescence often leaves. He wrestled with self-doubt, with the feeling, common to those who dream beyond their circumstances, that he was somehow not enough, not yet. Yet it was in these years that a teacher, recognizing the subtle gravity he carried, suggested he consider acting seriously, not as a hobby but as a craft. It was a school production of Waiting for Godot that first cracked open the future. On a small, unremarkable stage beneath a single spotlight, Kit lost himself or found himself in a character for the first time. The applause that night was a revelation. It wasn't the clapping he remembered later, but the silence just before it. That breathless moment when he felt connected to something larger than himself. Determined to refine his craft, Kit enrolled at the Central School of Speech and Drama, part of the University of London. There, he trained among peers who were as hungry as he was, navigating the brutal discipline of voice work, movement, text analysis. The days were long, the criticism sharp, but Kit thrived. He learned to break himself down and rebuild, to pour pain, doubt, and desire into characters that would breathe because he believed in them. Professors spoke of his intensity, a focus that was not about ambition, but about a bone-deep need to make something real. His first major professional break was in theater. In 2008, barely out of school, he landed the role of Albert in the original production of War Horse at the National Theatre. Night after night, he rode the invisible horse into the hearts of audiences. His performance raw, urgent, unforgettable. Critics noticed. Directors noticed. And soon casting agents came calling. Then, in a twist of fate, a project came that would redefine him. Game of Thrones, a sprawling epic adapted from George R.R. Martin's novels, was casting an ensemble of unknowns. Kit auditioned for the role of Jon Snow, the brooding bastard son of Ned Stark, and landed it. His life changed overnight, though at first he barely noticed. "It felt like another job," he once said. "I had no idea what we were unleashing. But unleash it they did." As Game of Thrones grew from cult fantasy to global phenomenon, so too did Kit's fame swell. His portrayal of Jon Snow was haunted, a portrait of honor in a dishonorable world. Viewers fell in love with his quiet strength, his vulnerability, the aching loneliness behind the armor. Awards followed, magazine covers, endless interviews. Yet fame sat uneasily on Kit's shoulders. He described it as wearing a mask everyone recognized, but feeling invisible behind it. Off-screen, he wrestled with anxiety, with the paralyzing fear of not living up to the expectations foisted upon him. There were battles with alcohol, stints in rehabilitation clinics, nights when the weight of carrying the world's sorrowful hero almost crushed the man beneath the costume. "I lost myself a little," he confessed years later. I had to find out who I was without the sword, without the title. Through it all, love anchored him. On set, he met Rose Leslie, the actress who played Ygritte, his character's fiery wildling lover. Art and life entwined. They fell in love, married in a quiet ceremony in Scotland, and later welcomed a child, a son, into the world. Parenthood brought a new gravity, a grounding. "You are the watcher on the wall," Kit wrote once in a journal entry to his newborn. "You are the sword in the darkness. For you I will be better." There were failures too. Projects that flopped, performances that critics panned, moments when he doubted if he had anything left to offer beyond Jon Snow's heavy shadow. But each time he returned to the work, to the essential act of becoming, breaking, becoming again. In his later years, Kit retreated somewhat from the spotlight. He chose roles carefully, theater again, indie films, voice work that let him disappear and reappear on his own terms. He taught occasional masterclasses in acting, speaking quietly to students about honesty, about the sacredness of vulnerability. "Fame," he would say, "is a river you cross. The important thing is what you carry with you to the other side." He grew older with grace. Silver crept into the dark curls. His voice deepened into a rougher, richer music. Illness touched him only lightly, like a respectful visitor. In his last years, he lived on a small farm with Rose and their children, tending gardens, writing, reading voraciously. He never fully escaped the pull of art, nor did he want to. His final project, a one-man stage play about grief and resurrection, ended with a standing ovation so fierce it shook the rafters. When Kit Harington passed quietly on a cool spring evening, surrounded by the smell of rain and the warm weight of family hands in his, the world paused, the way it does when something true is lost. Tributes poured in, not just from celebrities, but from those who saw in him a mirror of their own struggles, their own silent battles. Kit was remembered not for being a star, but for being something rarer. A storyteller who carried our sadness, our hopes, our impossible dreams, and made them real for a little while. He gave voice to the broken and made them beautiful. His legacy lives not only in the lines he spoke, but in the spaces between them, the silences, the half-smiles, the haunted eyes that said, "I know you. I am you." And so, somewhere beyond the wall of time and memory, the boy who dreamed of dragons still rides under endless gray skies, still keeping watch, still carrying the light.